Hi, everybody. I'm Pastor Kate Ryer-Welton. I'm the Lutheran campus pastor at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities, and I am so grateful to be coming to you via technology today. One of the really great blessings of LCM Sunday is that so many churches are interested in participating in it now that I have to come to you to be a part of your adult forum via YouTube. So here I am. This year we have 9 churches. You are one of them that's welcoming students into your pulpits, hearing a word of grace and a word of truth from young adults, kind of filtered through their young adult experience. You obviously and many other churches are hosting adult forums where you can learn a little bit more about the ministry of Lutheran Campus Ministry Twin Cities. And many of you are also imagining ways that your congregation can be financially supportive of this ministry, where you can really help us to thrive on campus. And so first of all, we, the board of directors, the students, we just want to say how grateful we are for you all being the body of Christ together with us. We aren't exaggerating when we say we couldn't do this without the support of congregations and individuals of the Minneapolis and St. Paul area synods. It just wouldn't be possible. So we're grateful for you and grateful for all of the gifts that you bless us with, along with the prayers that I know you certainly pray for these students. If you're watching this, you are in the 2.0 section of Lutheran Campus Ministry LCM Sunday videos, so hooray for you. There's a few pastors that wanted just a little bit deeper dive, not the general introduction, because they felt like you all knew enough about Lutheran Campus Ministry Twin Cities generally, and so we're going to be taking a deep dive. LCM has, for most of my time here, really been shaped by these 3 expressions of being curious, being real, and being community. And so I would be happy to come and talk to you about what it means to us to be curious and why we think that that's so important, and why students continue to be drawn into curiosity as a faithful expression of who they are as Christians, and also who we should be as Christian community, and also what it means to create a community of trust and authenticity, how we do that, how we really live into this be real expression. I think that this has always actually been very important for young adults. This 18 to 26 age range has always desired authenticity in their life and in relationship to leaders, and also in relationship to their faith and spirituality. And so we can talk about how we do that and how we shake that up. But what we're going to talk about today is being community. And one of the reasons I decided to talk about this is, in part, when I started 10 years ago, I was younger as a person, but our culture was also in a different place. And my sense is that being community is actually one of the most powerful things that we can do together as Christians in a culture of polarization and isolation. I think that trusted and authentic communities of authenticity and trust create space for deep spiritual transformation, for Christ to meet people in those places that are broken, and also affect some really beautiful healing among them. So I think that it does but I also think it has the power, it has the potential for some real social and cultural transformation too. So it's about folks' individual experience and meeting Christ and experiencing healing in their life. But I also think it has ripple effects into the culture of the campus, certainly for us, but I think also as these young adults are sent out into the world, knowing people who are different than they are, and having experienced being loved by people who are quite different than they are, and hanging in there across lines of difference. I think it's a really powerful experience, and it actually can change the world. So be community. You maybe have heard me talk about this. I've been talking about it for a year now. In May of last year, there was a study that came out from the Cigna Health Insurance Group, and they have been tracking loneliness since the 30s or 40s, I think. The report is online, and so if you Google Cigna loneliness study May 2018, you'll probably get to it. And they've been tracking loneliness because it has such serious health implications. So lonely people are generally physically more ill, and so insurance companies are interested in this, right? But what they discovered last year, what they reported out in May, is that young adults age 18 to 26 are reporting higher levels of loneliness than any other generation. It has historically been our elders that have been the loneliness, or who at least have reported the highest levels of loneliness. And now this college age group, the age group that I'm working with, are the ones that are reporting the highest levels of loneliness. And so I think that that's very significant, and it's something for us to pay attention to as a church. And so I just want to put that out there. And then I also wanted you all to know that there's a serious mental health crisis that's happening. There have been articles in the New York Times and the Washington Post. It's been all over the place. That 1 in 3, the statistic that's often quoted is that 1 in 3 college students reports a diagnosis at some point in their life of depression or mental health. So out of, or depression or anxiety, sorry, excuse me. So out of 55,000 students at the University of Minnesota, that's roughly 15,000 students that have at some point in their life experienced depression or anxiety. So that gives you a sense of the scale. In the incoming class this year, we have a board member who's in the administration for the University of Minnesota, and he said that the incoming class there was 43% of them that reported having a diagnosis of depression or anxiety at some point in their life. So they're not necessarily coming in with this diagnosis, but they've experienced it at some point in their life. And that's pretty incredible. I'd be happy to come out when I'm not talking to you on video and think with you about the root causes of this and what might actually be going on. And I'm also really happy to come talk to you about ways that we as a church could respond holistically, intergenerationally, in a community-focused ways, because I have some ideas about that. But today we don't have enough time for that. We only have about 10 minutes. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about how we foster community at the University of Minnesota and why I think that this can be really important. So one of the things that we do is create some intentionality. I think we still have this cultural myth that community happens spontaneously, or at least that's what my college students that I talk to often report. And I think that community actually requires a little bit more intentionality, particularly when we're in an environment when it's so easy to isolate oneself and to feel like you're participating in life when actually you're alone by yourself, not in physical, incarnate proximity to one another. And so I speak and I talk very intentionally about the importance of proximity to one another. And Christian community is really a place where we've always valued that. So each year at our fall retreat, we have a fall retreat, which is a way to kind of gather together new folks, give them connections, and also just like really have a chance to connect with ourselves, to connect with one another, and to reconnect with God. So we do an exercise, like an icebreaker, and I ask a bunch of questions, but I'm intentional every year to have them stand on a spectrum where they agree or disagree with this statement: community happens spontaneously, or community should happen spontaneously. And many students often agree strongly with that statement because there is something you can't like hotwire connection, right? Brene Brown says that you can't force people to be together if they don't want to be there. There has to be some chemistry, but there also has to be a structure and a community that really supports that. And so we, to build that, one of the things we do, and one of the things that your support really helps make possible, is we have one-on-ones. Our students do one-on-ones with any student who shows up at Pause or that signs up on our mailing list. So this year we extended over 200 invitations for students to have coffee, just to feel known on campus. So even if they never darken our doorstep, even if they never respond to that email, they know that somebody cares about them and is connecting and is seeking connection with them. And so we have these little $5 coffee gift cards that we give to students and student leaders, which is exactly enough for 2 coffees at Starbucks or Caribou. And so we give them these gift cards, and they can take these students out to coffee. And they do that, and that's often the thing that gets students to cross the threshold, because it's scary to enter a room where you don't know anybody, especially if Christianity is new to you or liturgical traditions are new to you. It's a weird thing to just walk into a space, so we try to help people feel known before they get there. Another thing that happened last year is we had a bunch of new people that showed up, and we had lost a bunch of seniors, and so it felt like there were so many new people in the community, and nobody was saying yes to much outside of worship. And so we had 50 or 60 people in worship each week, but nobody was doing anything else with each other. It felt really hard to get to know each other, and so we decided to break people up into these teeny tiny small groups. So we don't expect more than 4 or 5 people to be actively participating in these, what we call huddles. They're small groups, by the end of the year. And these huddles have been a really meaningful way to break up cliques that inevitably happen within community, to help students articulate what God is up to in their life and put their faith in action, but also just to have a group of people with whom they can share their life, their joys and their sorrows. And it's small enough that if you don't come, people notice. So it gets people out of their house. It gets people out of their house, out of their dorm room, whatever, and drawn into community once a week. And our students really love these, way more than I thought they would, and generally stick with it through the end of the season. We provide opportunities for people to opt in and opt out at different seasons, so they don't have to make a lifelong commitment to this. And then next year, one of the things we're doing with our leadership model is we're going to start huddles earlier, because this community formation seems so important, and increasingly important, actually. And we are going to figure out a way with our leaders. I'm not an expert on this. I just think it's really important to equip people to discern and to listen into what God is doing in the world. And so we're going to work with our servant leaders to figure out how we can look out for students who are in our orbit. Right. And so what I realized this year as I was talking to one of our leaders is she had a list of 3 or 4 or 5 people maybe that she had known, that she ran into on campus, and she had seen kind of coming to pause, but then not coming back. And she I think just thought somebody else was checking in on them, or didn't feel like it was her job necessarily to check in on them. And I thought, oh, like we have to tell students, and perhaps in Christian communities all over, we have to equip people to notice when folks aren't coming back, and to check in on them, and to figure out how you can kind of wrap them back into community if they want. Of course, if they found another faith community or decided it's not for them, we're not gonna like drag them in by their like wrists or something. We're just gonna we'll give them space. But if there is something going on in their life, if they are experiencing a flare-up of their depression or anxiety, if they're feeling exceedingly lonely, if they're experiencing the paralysis that can sometimes accompany the onslaught of opportunity and expectation that's very real for college students, we want to be able to walk with them and welcome them into community. And so we're going to give each leader 5 or 6 people. We have a lot of leaders, and so they're each going to be in charge of 5 or 6, we call them baby gophers, the freshmen that are coming in. And so they'll have 5 or 6 baby gophers, and maybe some other folks that are new to the U, or new to our community, which aren't necessarily baby gophers. And they'll be in charge of kind of parenting or big siblinging this small group of people. And they may or may not be in this student's huddle, but we do hope that creates some kind of meaningful connection. So I'm really excited to see how that shapes and forms our community and helps us make an impact on campus. So the last thing I want to say, and I have already talked a little bit too much, but the last thing I want to say is that we are a community that is also diverse in experience. We come from really rural areas and really urban areas. We are a politically diverse community, and we're a community that's really we're diverse in majors, and so we don't speak the same language often about politics or about theology, but we are really grounded in a sense of curiosity about one another. And I think that has helped that posture of curiosity has helped shape us into a community where we can be really honest about our differences, where we can at least try to be honest about our differences. It's so scary in this culture to say I disagree with you. So we try to create spaces for students to really do that. And that's becoming a marker of our community, and one that certainly creates some division. But these students are willing to hang in there in a way that I don't experience in my own friend circles. And I think it's really powerful to imagine how they're going to change and shape our world. So we are learning with you. We're happy to share with you what we're learning with Christ as our center, what it means to be Christian community in the 21st century. How do we institutionalize some of our community practices without creating like overly formal or rigid structures that can stifle the work of the Spirit, of course? How do we share in one another's suffering without letting that be our whole story? How do we also share in one another's joy so we can be there for the whole range of experience? And these students certainly have their share of heartache. They are people like anybody else, and so they're bringing the same stuff. This is not a carefree existence that they're living. How do we cross lines of difference and learn from one another without feeling like we have to be a monolith politically or theologically? I think all of these are really great questions, and they're questions that we're discerning and we're exploring in the community that Christ calls together and promises to show up amongst. Our main gathering is our worship service. We have this spring, we've had no less than 50 and up to 65 students that have been coming to gather together to hear God's word proclaimed, to hear their belovedness proclaimed, and then to share in Holy Communion, even if that's a really weird thing for them. They participate in this meal because I think they understand that they are bound together, and they want to experience what it's like to really live in that. So again, I'm happy to come and talk more. I'm so grateful for your support. I hope you have a really robust conversation after I stop talking, which I'm going to do now. Thank you. Bye-bye.